Sister Lynn Neff is home recovering from surgery. I think she would probably enjoy this opening story that I want to share with you. Some of you probably know her husband, Paul Neff, but many of you don't know. Paul passed away just a few years ago, and shortly before that, there was a storm that came through and created quite a bit of damage at their house with trees and other things and stuff like that. I wasn't aware of that, but just making small talk with him one Sunday at lunchtime, just like we would have encountered earlier today, asked him what he was doing. And he said, well, I've got some limbs I've got to clean up my backyard. And I said, well, Paul, several of us guys could probably come help you out. And he goes, no, that's not needed. If you know Paul, he would have put it off. But nevertheless, a number of us went over there and we showed up, we got to work. Some of us had kind of small jobs, some of us a little bit bigger jobs. But there was one thing that we all knew would have to be tackled sooner or later, and right in the middle of the yard was this big, gnarly tree that had gone down. And it was right real close to their house, and the end of it was in this kind of pond thing in their yard. And normally when you're trying to take down a big tree like that, you would start at the end and kind of work your way back. But the problem was both ends, one of them was up against the house, and the other one was in this water, and none of us really we were just in no hurry to get to it, any one of us. And so we finally got to that, got everything done that we could, and we're kind of standing around trying to figure out what to do. And the next thing I know, old Paul, he just whipped out his chainsaw. He did something I don't think you're supposed to do. He just has that thing right above him, and he's going after the trunk of that tree the best he can. And I've got this great view watching him doing nothing. And I'm kind of looking at him with equal parts shame and admiration. You know, shame because there's all these young studs around him, and we're watching this old guy. I mean, he's probably close to 70, maybe over 70, and he's just slaying this tree at this point, and we're just standing around watching him. And that's the admiration part of it. And the long and short of it is when we got done, that tree had been gone, had carried out to the curb, and I'm sure the city hauled it off from that standpoint. So some of you that know Paul and those of you that don't, you share that memory with me now. What a great story. And that's one of the many ways, or one of the few very special ways, that I'll remember Paul Neff. And I share that story with you as just kind of an opening to help you understand the power of stories. When you listen to a story, whatever your age, you're kind of transported someplace else. You have some kind of view what his yard looked like in your mind, what that tree looked like, what Paul looked like with that chainsaw above him in this dangerous, precarious situation. And you might not know all the details. I don't even remember all the details, but probably for weeks to come, you could kind of share that story with other people. And you weren't even there. And that's kind of the power of stories. You kind of forget where you are and you're immersed in it. You know, when you're telling someone a story, it's been observed a number of things physically. Maybe your palms will start to sweat because you're nervous from what you're hearing or seeing. You might blink faster. Your heartbeat may flutter, may even skip a little bit. Your breathing may change. Your facial expressions kind of shift around. Your eyebrows go up and down. And these are all signs of engagement with the story. And some of you are reflecting that back to me right now. Thank you very much. But even scientists see things. You go a little bit deeper with today's technology, and you can look inside the body and the brain and all of that, and they see these different parts of the brain light up as stories are being told while this person's being evaluated, and they're listening to the narrative being presented. And these parts of the brain that control language processing and neural circuits and emotional processing and movement, they all kind of light up and flash, I guess, in this technology. It's fascinating to me kind of hear something like that. And really what these scientists conclude is that as you hear this story start to unfold, and as you maybe engage into it and people can see that, what really happens is you start to synchronize with the storyteller. You start to be like right there with that person. And that's really powerful. And what this shows is that stories provide higher and higher amounts of immersion and engagement, connection, and comprehension of the topic being told. When you think about God's Word, don't we want all of those things? And we talk about reading the Bible continuously and frequently, and we need to do that. but don't we want to read it in a way that we get immersed in it a bit more? We engage with it a bit more. We comprehend it a bit more. Well, that's one of the beauties of the Bible. I read a book some time ago. It talked about how there's memory competitions today. I never knew such a thing existed, frankly. There's world champions out there. And the reason we don't know about it very often is because we don't really value having a good memory today. In fact, there's not a big need for it, frankly. But as I understand it, going way back even in Old Testament times, people would remember entire manuscripts. So there would be someone who could recite word for word the book of Genesis by memory. And, we can't do that today. Culture has changed that today. But you know what? We do have something that stands the test of time? Stories in the Bible. And, if I were to ask you to list out, some of you are taking notes, the 10 Commandments, some of you might get there. It might take you a while. Some of you might get 8 or so, but I would say very few of us could get all 10. And I would say even fewer could get 10 in the order that they are in the Bible. If I ask you to list out all the tabernacle and its measurements and elements and where they all were, I would venture to say probably none of us could do that today. If you can, I will get you a bottle of water from the back when we're done. But we don't remember facts like that today. Someone once upon a time did. But as you look at this particular slide and all of these stories that you see up there, you could tell someone every one of these stories, at least parts of it, the key things that you take from it. And that's one of the wonderful things about God and Jesus, I suppose, is that they knew culture would change, things would change, humanity would change, and who knows where it'll go if the world continues on. But He presented the Word in many ways in the form of stories so that we could engage with it a bit more. We could relate to it a bit more, and we could share it with others as we grow as both individuals and that we help grow the kingdom. Well, today, I want to examine the story of Caleb, as you would have seen on our opening slide there. And really, I want to draw a few practical applications. Generally, in this kind of a setting, we've got established Christians maybe thinking about practical ways to grow their faith and help present the Word to others. And so this afternoon, I wanted to do that. Here's a few facts about Caleb. Some of these are maybe more prominent to others and things. But one of the things Caleb shares with our Lord and Savior Jesus, he came from the same tribe of the children of Israel, the tribe of Judah. And he was born in Egypt, and of course, being born in Egypt there, he was raised in slavery, in bondage and things. And Jacob mentioned this morning about, or read from the Exodus and things. And after that, he went on, and when they were able to escape from Egyptian bondage, they made this travel for the promised land and things. And he was actually one of 12 men who was asked to do this very important work, to go out and scout this promised land and really figure out where are the opportunities there, where are the challenges there, not really to come back and discourage the people, but to come back with a way to encourage the people. And he did that at the ripe old age of about 40 years old. And later on, we find there that 10 of the men kind of just basically tried to discourage the people and said, hey, we're all good right here. We don't really need to go over there and try to follow God's word. But Joshua and Caleb, of course, were two of the men who said, no, that's where we're intended to be. It's a good land. It will take some work, but we're ready for it. And we find there that those were the only two men above the age of 20 who would be allowed to enter that great, wonderful land. And so they would begin a period of wandering. And then when it was time to actually go and try and conquest the land, it was divided up. These leaders were given kind of skin in the game, so to speak. Each of you are going to have this land, and it's going to be yours. And that's what you're going to be fighting for. And you're going to fight for it as a group, but you're going to fight for it as individuals as well. And again, he was one of these men who was part of that at age 80. The conquest takes a few years there, and then ultimately he took and was able to settle in the promised land in the hill country of Hebron. And there's a lot of different maps you can look at here. Jerusalem, of course, is north of there. The Sea of Galilee is further north off the map. The Jordan River kind of comes down into the Dead Sea there. And so this is the area of Judah. But Hebron, as I understand, was I guess for me, what I would think of hill country, kind of light mountainous terrain. It's just beautiful. And great weather and other things. And ultimately, that's where he settled. And those are kind of some facts, maybe a bit of a story, a recap of the life of Caleb. And but you know, and I touched on it just briefly there, but there's one part of Caleb's life, his story, if you will, that's incredible to me. And I really want to kind of study that with you here this afternoon. And I want to study it maybe in kind of a unique way. And what's unique about it is this story is told by 3 different people. I don't know if you realize that, but when you go through the scriptures, and we're not going to be able to go through all of them, but we're going to look at each of the 3 times it's told. And we're going to glean a couple of things from that, and we'll talk a little bit more about storytelling after this. But if you were to go to the book of Joshua 14, and actually chronologically, this is kind of the last of the 3 times this is told, but I'm going to start here because this is the moment in which Caleb tells his own story. And the context here is Caleb, as I was just kind of summarizing, Caleb, he's spied out the promised land. He's kind of lived his life. He's wandered out in the wilderness. Family, we learn that he's had a wife. He's got a daughter, at least one daughter, probably other children and things. And then he's gone on and he's helped to conquer the promised land. And he has to remind Joshua of a promise that Moses gave him when he was one of those 12 spies. And, and he proceeds to kind of tell this to Joshua. And so in Joshua chapter 14, and I think I'll just start with verse 6. I'll kind of read here until I stop, I guess. It says here, the children of Judah. So this is Caleb's people, if you will. It's not a bunch of strangers or other things. It's kind of an intimate group of people. The children of Judah came to Joshua in Gilgal, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to him, "You know the word which the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, concerning you and me in Kadesh Barnea?" He says, remember what Moses said. "I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I brought back word to him as it was in my heart. Nevertheless, my brethren who went up with me made the heart of the people melt. But I wholly followed the Lord my God." So Moses swore on that day, saying, "Surely the land where your foot is trodden shall be your inheritance and your children's forever, because you have wholly followed the Lord my God." In verse 10 he says, "And now behold, the Lord has kept me alive. And as he said, these 45 years, ever since the Lord spoke this word to Moses, while Israel wandered in the wilderness, and now here I am this day, 85 years old. As yet as I am as strong this day as on the day that Moses sent me, just as my strength was then, so now is my strength for war, both for going out and for coming in. Now therefore, give me this mountain, of which the Lord spoke in that day. For you heard in that day how the Anakim were there, and that the cities were great and fortified. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall be able to drive them out, as the Lord said." In verse 13, Joshua blessed him and gave Hebron to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, as an inheritance. Kennedy once told me that my daughter Kennedy once told me that when she reads stories sometimes, or when she reads certain books and things, she doesn't actually like audiobooks. And it's because she wants to invent the voices in her head, what they sound like. She wants to come up with her own kind of inflection, if you will, and voices and stuff, and rhythm and all of those kind of pace and everything. She wants control of that. I don't know if you ever think to read the Bible like that. But I don't really think Caleb said, "Excuse me, Joshua, we've come a long ways and we just kind of want to finish the task here. Can we go to Hebron? I would like an attempt to do that, sir. I think he was very passionate. This meant a lot to him. This was 45 years that he was promised, and he lived faithfully all of that time. He never questioned God, and I'm sure not every day was great for him. Probably at times he had some doubts. And he didn't say, hey, I think I can take these guys. He says, give me this mountain. Let me try to do it. And you can kind of see it. The Anakim, by the way, as I understand it, you can read about them if you're curious. Maybe some of you have studied it a lot more than me. I guess they were really large people, maybe giants. I don't know. They were intimidating, I know that. So that's kind of a big deal where he says in verse 12, the Anakim were there and the cities were great and fortified. This wasn't kind of like fun size opponents. These were more like the king size, family size, sharing and everything. And it would take quite a bit of effort and stuff. You know what's interesting about this? Sometimes we kind of shy away from telling stories, our own stories. And we shouldn't do that. I think at times our stories, especially when you think about our Christian lives, are really valuable and they need to be shared. Now, sharing is really important. You'll notice I didn't start off this afternoon with a great story about how wonderful I was at some point in my life. Maybe I've got one or two of those. I focused on someone else. But in an intimate setting, like with my family at home, they'll hear stories about where maybe Becky and I struggled. They'll hear stories where we try to prioritize something that would make them better. They'll hear stories about how we want them to enjoy certain blessings and promises of God. And we want them to do that, so maybe they will get a little more connected, a little more immersed, a little more engaged with God's Word and His promises and His church and all the good things about it. And that's what Caleb did here. He didn't bring all the other tribes. He didn't bring a lot of strangers. He didn't bring some politician he wanted to impress. He brought his family. And he said, Joshua, we're ready. We're ready to take what's ours. If you'll be with us. I've been faithful for a long time, and I just need you to do one more thing. And so, the setting matters, the audience matters, the motive matters. All of those kinds of things really matter. He wasn't trying to brag or anything. He was just saying, I'm here to do what God asked us to do. And I'm here to receive what God promised. And, maybe you've got a story like that to be told. And maybe in the right setting, you can tell it. And I think that would be really valuable to share. The other thing about Caleb and his story is it wasn't just told by a godly person, someone with a godly conscience and things. It was also told by godly people. And you'll find in Numbers chapter 32, now we're going to kind of move back a little bit in God's Word. And this is a story told by Moses. And this was near the end of his life. And again, I can't just, for the interest of time, I just don't want to read a lot of these stories and things, but the long and short of it here is the tribes were kind of going in to settle the east of Jordan. Of course, they really needed to go in and conquest the promised land. But if you look at that map, the Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River, and the Dead Sea, most of the tribes were on the left side of the map or the west side of it, but there was kind of 2.5 tribes. Gad and Reuben would be 2 full tribes that stay on the east side of the river. And they were kind of like, you'll just see here. I'll just kind of read here. It says in Numbers chapter 32 and verse 1, the children of Reuben and the children of Gad had a very great multitude of livestock. And when they saw the land of Jazer and the land of Gilead, that indeed the region was a place for livestock, the children of Gad and the children of Reuben came and spoke to Moses, to Eleazar the priest, and to the leaders of the congregation, saying, all these names here, a lot of names, the country which the Lord defeated before the congregation of Israel is a land for livestock, and your servants have livestock. Therefore they said, if we have found favor in your sight, let this land be given to your servants as a possession, and do not take us over the Jordan. So they're saying, hey, we've got livestock. This place looks like it's good for livestock. How about we just hang here? Y'all go ahead and go do the conquest, and we'll cheer for you back here. And it's kind of what they're saying. And it kind of makes sense. And Moses said to the children of Gad and to the children of Reuben in verse 6, shall your brethren go to war while you sit here? Now why will you discourage the heart of the children of Israel from going over into the land which the Lord has given them? Thus your fathers did when I sent them away from Kadesh Barnea to see the promised land. For when they went up to the valley of Eshcol and they saw the land, they discouraged the heart of the children of Israel so that they did not go into the land which the Lord had given them. So the Lord's anger was aroused on that day, and he swore an oath, saying, surely none of them who came up from Egypt from 20 years old and above shall see the land of which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because they have not wholly followed me, except Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite and Joshua the son of Nun, for they have wholly followed the Lord. Moses said, I've seen this before. I've been around a long time, and I'm not going to get to go into that promised land, but I know a few things here. The reason I'm dealing with you today is because your fathers played this same game 40 years ago. And I've seen it before. They saw a challenge, and they didn't think it was worth it, and they wanted to stay on the sidelines and kind of keep what they had, so to speak. And he says here in verse 14, look, you have risen in your father's place, a brood of sinful men, to increase still more the fierce anger of the Lord against Israel. For if you turn away from following him, he will once again leave them in the wilderness, and you will destroy all these people. Moses, even though he didn't go into the promised land, arguably probably one of the most well-known people in the Bible. I suspect if we just walked around the town of Norman and tried to ask them to list people in the Bible they know, Moses would probably come up often. And I think people also recognize what a great leader he was and what a great servant of God he was. When you think about all of that, think about all the people he could talk about and praise and use to make a point of faithfulness and strength and service and obedience to God. He chose Caleb. That's pretty cool for Caleb. It's awesome. It's really awesome. And I don't know if you've ever had anyone tell a story about you when you don't ask for it. But it was something that was really a really important part of your life. You feel special. And especially when it helps kind of someone else grow and embrace the struggle of life and realize, man, yeah, we all have these struggles, but I can relate to that. And if that person can overcome, I can overcome. I suspect Caleb was one of those people that, you know, as great as I'm trying to make him up to be, probably a lot of people thought, well, if Caleb can do it, I can do it. And that's why one of the reasons he's a great example to many people. He just kind of did what was expected of him, and he didn't shy away from the challenges and the opportunities were there. So I think it's really great that someone else is willing to tell the stories, especially when they're not just people out in the world, but they're godly people. And they're trying to show your godliness as they describe your life. But lastly, one of the great honors is for God to tell your story to others. You know, if you just skip over a little bit to the book of Deuteronomy now, it's still Moses, for the most part, writing, or who's the writer of all of this. You know, and Israel is basically refusing to enter the land. And so there's all this exchange with Moses and others and stuff. But notice here what it says in verse 34. It says, the Lord heard the sound of your words and was angry and took an oath, saying this. So it's the Lord said this. Surely not one of these men of this evil generation shall see that good land of which I swore to give to your fathers, except Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. He shall see it, and to him and his children I am giving the land on which he walked, because he wholly followed the Lord. The Lord was also angry with me for your sakes, saying, even you shall not go in there. Joshua, the son of Nun, who stands before you, he shall go in there. Encourage him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit it. And then skipping down to verse 40, it says, but as for you, turn and take your journey into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. It's interesting. God here is kind of describing, really what he's trying to describe is you're either with me or you're not with me. If you're not with me, there's the wilderness and the Red Sea. And of course, the Red Sea, and Moses part of the Red Sea, that's where death and destruction is. If you're with me, this is what it looks like. Caleb and Joshua. But Caleb. And this is God telling this story. You ever wondered a little bit what it would be like when you enter heaven? There's jokes and other things and all kinds of stuff. I don't think any of us really know much about it. But first of all, when you get there, you've been faithful on earth all the way to the end. You've been like Caleb, all the way to the end. And you go in, maybe perhaps, Jesus or God kind of welcomes you over. I don't know that we have bodies. It says it's very different. We don't have marriages in heaven and stuff. It's very different. But just stick with me here. Kind of wraps his arm around. Says, hey guys, let me tell you a story about old Caleb. Let me tell you a story about Johnny or Sally or Joe or Bobby or whoever. This is God or Jesus telling that story. Wouldn't that be cool? Maybe they're doing that right now. And look at that person. Struggling. But look how they came out. Look at them. What they're doing. In all three of these stories, there's this phrase. I think this is really important when you think about telling stories and wanting stories told. The point of all these was Caleb wholly followed the Lord. I think all the way to heaven. Certainly all the way into the promised land, all the way into Hebron. They even changed the name of that place for him. And then I think all the way into heaven. These are some great stories, and if you've never studied Caleb very much, I gave you some facts on that page with the map. You might remember some of that. But I think probably what you'll remember is you'll remember the story even more. And I hope you'll do that. Maybe you feel inspired to kind of learn to tell stories a little bit more to help people approach God. And I never want to try and substitute any of this for God's Word. It's perfect in its own right. But maybe at times, maybe you want your own voices when you're reading the Bible. Maybe you want to read the Bible with a little bit different energy and zeal and pace. Maybe you want to read it in a way that, here's a story, so it's not just a list of names or facts or other things. I'm going to try to embrace with it a little bit more. Well, these stories can be incredibly helpful to your faith and to each other, to strengthen, to fellowship. That was described this morning in Kevin's study of God's Word as well, idea of fellowship and stuff. One of the things I would say is these stories are everywhere. Some of us, maybe we just need to look for them a little bit more. One of the things I've learned, I haven't lived as long as some of you, but I've lived long enough to know this, is that spectators really don't ever have many stories to tell. They got a lot of stories to criticize, but they don't have many stories to tell. And Christianity is not a spectator sport, so to speak. Oh yeah, it says watch. And that means just don't idly sit and wait. But it doesn't mean just sit and wait. It means get in the game. And I love hearing stories of people's baptism. It always seems like it involves cold water or something and stuff like that. And that's really wonderful. Those are great stories. Frankly, I kind of wish people would work to really pull some of those details out. Stuff. Tell us what the temperature was and all that and things, the goosebumps and all those things. Those are great stories. If you were baptized 10 hours, 10 days, or 10 weeks ago, that's a good story. If you were baptized 10 months or 10 years ago, you need some more stories. That's what I think. And I'm sure this was just one story of Caleb, but I'm sure there were a lot of stories he gathered over those 40 or 45 years. So look for those stories. Some of you got some incredibly interesting lives, but when you're telling a story, you don't have to tell us your whole life. Maybe find that one thing that's really important. And not only that, once you have something that's really relatable to a lot of people, look for the perfect opportunities to share it and reflect with people. I see what you're going through there. That reminds me of this. And it can deepen your connection, help draw a greater connection and strength to God. And finally, create some structure to it. Spend a little time to kind of set it up. You know, I don't know that I'm a great storyteller, but I tried to do some of these things with that opening story. Kind of set it up, build this climax, provide the resolution. You were wondering if Paul was going to succeed or not with that chainsaw. If we were going to get rid of that gnarly tree, and we did. We had a lot of guys there helping out with that, and it was awesome. Know who you're talking to. Know the setting for telling some of these stories. Age matters, gender matters, intimacy matters, like large group, small group, all that and everything else. You know, how you deliver it is really important. I'll give you water as well if you know what prosody means, or if that's even how you pronounce it. This is something I got a long, long time ago when I was learning about public speaking and power. You understand that. Try to use some of that a little bit today and then back off. We see that wonderfully in some of the songs we've sung just this afternoon. Pace, do you speed up, slow down? Really, you're trying to connect with people. The point is, the Bible doesn't have to be so monotone. You raise and lower your voice, kind of have these emphatic pauses. Prosody, for me, is like rhythm. It's kind of this rhythm to it and stuff. And for whatever reason, that tends to make it memorable. And there's this rhythm of the human mind that we can remember one thing or three things, and we struggle to remember any other number of things for whatever reason. That's what I understand. Find ways to inspire people. Again, Caleb, in God's great divine nature, whatever Caleb could have said or did, might have thought to say in that moment, he didn't say, give me an opportunity to go fight these guys and stuff. He says, as the song we sing says, give me this mountain. And if you have never heard anything about Caleb today, I suspect you would at least remember that. He says, give me this mountain. And he made it not just memorable, but inspiring as well. And maybe you can watch and learn from others. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about this great servant of God, this great leader for God, this great person in the lineage of Jesus. And so much of the qualities we see in Christ, we see in Caleb. But I also want to just kind of give you something practically to think about as you engage with your friends and you're trying to draw someone to Christ and maybe help your neighbors, help each one of us, and maybe even help your children and others in your family who maybe need a little encouragement to go take that mountain. Never want to close without offering the gospel invitation. If you know God's word and you believe in God and you stand ready to repent of sins and confess Jesus before others, we stand ready to baptize you. And these will follow all the conversions we find in the book of Acts and throughout the New Testament. And if you need to do that, we stand ready to help you now or at any time. If you need prayers, we can help you as well. We invite you to stand while we'll sing this song.